Welcome to Algebra. We're doing Chapter 1, Section 9 on opposites and absolute value. If we're talking about an opposite of a number, we're talking about the number that when added to the original number we get 0. For example, 6 and negative 6 are opposites because when you add them together they make 0. And when you see this bar and then A, you read it as the opposite of A because it isn't negative A, since A could be either positive or negative. And here are some special cases. If A is negative, let's say it's negative 3, then the opposite of A is positive. So the opposite of negative 3 comes out 3, which is positive. If you start out with a positive number like A is 4, then the opposite of A turns out to be negative. So the opposite of 4 is negative 4. And if A is 0, then the opposite of 0 equals 0, since 0 plus 0 makes 0. 0 is its own opposite. And if you have the opposite of A, the opposite of the opposite of A, so you have the opposite of, let's say it is a positive number 4. So the opposite of 4 is 4, comes out to be the number itself. If the number was negative, the opposite of negative 2, the opposite of negative 2 is 2, and the opposite of that is negative 2. It comes out to be the number itself. Absolute value is indicated by 2 bars on either side of the number. It is always the distance. The number is from 0, so since we're measuring distance, it must always be positive. It can never be negative. So the distance 3 is from 0 is 3, and the distance of negative 3 from 0 is 3 spaces. It's how many spaces from 0. So if A is positive, the absolute value of a positive number is always that number. However, if A is negative, for example, negative 4, the absolute value is the opposite of that number, or positive. And 0 is its own absolute value because the absolute value of 0, 0, 0 spaces from 0. And as far as any math facts on the vocab check, there won't be a vocab check since we have a quiz on Monday. We're ready for the assignment, so you need to get your books open to page 38. Make sure your paper is set up. Math, room number, full name, full date, skip a line. The title is page 38, written 1 to 42. Skip a line. I want you to copy the problem down and then show the work as I do. So problem number 2. We have the opposite of the difference of 8 minus 2. 8 minus 2 is 6, so we have the opposite is 6, which is negative 6. Number 4 says the opposite is 0 plus 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. The opposite of 0 equals 0. Number 6, the opposite of negative 7 is 7. Added to 1 makes 8. Number 8 says 3 minus the opposite of negative 1, which is 1. So 3 minus 1 is 2. 10, the absolute value of negative 11, which is 11, plus 4 makes 15. Be sure and skip lines between problems and copy everything that I am writing down in black. Number 12, the absolute value of 2, which is 2, plus the absolute value of negative 9, which is 9, makes 11. (14), the absolute value of negative 1 is 1, minus the absolute value of 0, which is 0. 1 minus 0 is 1. 16, the absolute value of negative 2.5 is 2.8 is 2.8, plus the absolute value of positive 2.8 is 2.8, and that adds up to 5.6. Number 18, copy it down. Be sure you use 2 lines for fractions. The absolute value of negative 3/4 is 3/4. The absolute value of 1/4 is 1/4. So 3/4 minus 1/4. Same denominator, subtract the numerators, you get 2/4. Simplify, divide by 2, we get 1/2. Skip a line, number 20. The absolute value of 6 is 6, minus the absolute value of negative 6 is 6, so the answer is 0. On the following, on page 38, the directions say to complete using one of the symbols greater than, less than, or equal to make the statement true. So copy the original problem down. If there's any work, do it right underneath the left and right side. So the opposite of negative 2, there's some work there, that's 2. And the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. Now we can compare, and 2 is less than 3. 24, copy the problem down after you skip a line. The absolute value of negative 15 is 15. The absolute value of negative 6 is 6. 15 is greater than 6. 26, we have negative 3, nothing to do with that but bring it down. And the opposite of the absolute value of negative 3, the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. The opposite of that would be negative 3. So that would be equal. 27 through 30, translate each statement into symbols, in other words, change to math. This says 4 is less than the absolute value, use your bars, of negative 10. You don't have to copy the problem here. You don't have to copy this part. Number 30, the opposite of 8, so that would be the opposite of 8, is less than the opposite of 4. The next set of problems, solve each equation over the set of real numbers. That's the entire number line. If there is no solution, explain why there is none. Number 32 says the absolute value of p equals 2. So what numbers have a distance of 2 spaces from 0? And there are 2 of them. 2 and negative 2 are 2 spaces from 0. 34, the absolute value of what numbers equal 0.3? There are 2 such numbers, 3/10 and negative 3/10. 36, what numbers have a distance of negative 9? Well, we don't measure distance in a negative value, so this is one case where there is no solution. Absolute value is never, never negative. 38 says the absolute value of the opposite of what numbers equals 5. Well, the opposite of 5 is negative 5. Its absolute value is 5 spaces. And the opposite of negative 5 is 5, so its distance is also 5 spaces. So both of those work. In the last set of problems, you have expressions with 3 variables possibly used. The values are a is 1.5, b is negative 2, and c is negative 1.7. So copy the problem down and then substitute in. So I have 1.5 plus the absolute value of the opposite of b, which is negative 2. So that's 1.5 plus the opposite of negative 2 is 2. So 1.5 plus 2 is 3.5. Copy 42 down, the 2 times the absolute value of b minus the absolute value of a plus the absolute value of c. So I have 2 times the absolute value of negative 2. A is 1.5 and c is negative 1.7. So the absolute value of negative 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Minus the absolute value of 1.5 is 1.5. Plus the absolute value of negative 1.7 is 1.7. 4 minus 1.5 is 2.5. Added to 1.7 makes 4.2. And the last problem, 44, 10.5 minus A minus the quantity, the absolute value of C, plus the opposite of B. So substituting in, we get 10.5 minus 1.5, minus the quantity, the absolute value of negative 1.7, plus the opposite of negative 2. 10.5 take away 1.5 is 9, minus the quantity. Absolute value of negative 1.7 is 1.7. The opposite of negative 2 is plus 2. Adding what's in the grouping symbols first, we get 9 minus 3.7. 9 take away 3.7 is 5.3. That concludes the evens. Be sure you check the back of the book as you do the odds. If you have any that are wrong or any questions, you need to ask me for help.